Hello friends. On April 10, 1912, a significant event took place involving the RMS Titanic, which was considered the world's largest and most opulent ship of its time. The ship embarked on its inaugural journey from Southampton to New York, carrying a diverse range of passengers including renowned industrialists, actors, and immigrants seeking a better life in America. Captain Edward John Smith, a seasoned 62-year-old with 40 years of experience under his belt, was in command of the vessel. Initially slated to arrive in New York on April 17, 1912, the ship's fate took a dramatic turn just 4 days into its journey, that is on April 14, 1912. What exactly happened with the Titanic and how did the Unsinkable sink? Let's delve into this in today's video. Before going further into the video, I need to clarify a conspiracy theory regarding the Titanic. The theory suggests that the ship that sank was not actually the Titanic, but its sister ship, the RMS Olympic. According to this theory, the Olympic, which had previously been involved in a collision, was heavily damaged and deemed unseaworthy. In order to recoup the financial losses, it is believed that the White Star Line switched the identities of the two ships and intentionally sank the Olympic, disguising it as the Titanic. Proponents of this theory argue that the sinking was an elaborate insurance scam. However, this conspiracy theory has been widely debunked by experts and historians, who provide evidence and documentation confirming that the ship that sank was indeed the Titanic. Now let's get back to the video. The anticipation surrounding the Titanic was immense among both the passengers and the general public. The media also eagerly covered the ship, as it was not only the largest ever built, measuring approximately 269 meters in length and over 53 meters in height, but also boasted awe-inspiring luxury. Constructing the Titanic cost a staggering $7.5 million at that time, equivalent to around $400 million today when accounting for inflation. The ship's interior featured lavish amenities and exquisite decorations, surpassing even the standards of a five-star hotel. Stained glass mirrors, elaborate wood paneling, and two grand staircases adorned the vessel. Additional attractions included a heated swimming pool, a Turkish bath, an electric bath, a gymnasium, a squash court, 4 restaurants, 2 barbershops, and a library. Moreover, the Titanic was constructed with advanced safety features, leading many to believe that it was unsinkable. The ship was built by the White Star Line, a company whose vice president was so confident in the Titanic's invincibility that he publicly declared it to be unsinkable. Titanic received its initial ice warnings as it traversed the Atlantic Ocean on its voyage to America, a route known for its icy conditions. The presence of ice, particularly icebergs, posed a significant threat to the ship's safety. Such warnings were not uncommon in maritime travel, as ships often communicated via radio and visual signals to alert nearby vessels of ice in their vicinity, prompting them to exercise caution. Upon receiving these warnings, Titanic altered its course twice in an attempt to avoid potential danger. However, the ship maintained its speed without any reduction, continuing its journey towards its destination at a steady pace of 21.5 knots, equivalent to approximately 40 kilometers per hour. 2 days later, on April 14, 1912, the ship received an additional 7 ice warnings. Unfortunately, Captain Smith and his crew chose to disregard these warnings, opting not to slow down the speed of the Titanic. As the day progressed and the sun set, temperatures dropped, and an important observation was made: the moon was not visible that night. The absence of moonlight resulted in limited visibility, further complicating the already challenging conditions. The ship had a crow's nest, which is a small elevated platform serving as a lookout point. A crew member was assigned to occupy this position to keep a vigilant watch over the ship's path, scanning for potential obstacles or other vessels. The individual stationed there had to endure extremely low temperatures, worsened by the strong cold winds that prevailed at night. Additionally, tearing ice caused by the frigid gusts made it even more difficult to maintain clear vision. At precisely 11:39 p.m., Frederick Fleet, who was stationed in the crow's nest, made a harrowing discovery. a colossal iceberg loomed before him, prompting him to urgently ring the bell 3 times to alert those on the ship's deck. He swiftly reached for the telephone and relayed the distressing news to the officers on the bridge, emphasizing the imminent danger and the immediate need to change the ship's course. Upon receiving the message, Officer William promptly signaled the engine room, instructing them to steer the ship to the left. Unfortunately, their response came too late, and just a minute later, at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic collided with the iceberg. This was no ordinary iceberg, my friends. It spanned a length of 200 by 400 feet, equivalent to the size of a football field, and its height matched that of the crow's nest. Scientists estimate that this massive iceberg weighed around 1.5 million tons. The impact occurred on the front right side of the Titanic, near the bow. To clarify, the bow refers to the forwardmost part of the ship, as depicted in this picture. The stern is the section located above the bow, while the protruding part beneath is known as the keel. During the collision, the ship grazed against the iceberg for approximately 10 seconds, resulting in a significant dent and causing small punctures in the ship's hull. You may wonder how ice can penetrate metal. While a small piece of ice from your refrigerator cannot cut through metal, it's important to consider the immense weight of an iceberg. Although wood cannot typically pierce metal, a car crashing into a tree can still cause extensive deformation. Likewise, due to the iceberg's massive size and weight, it inflicted severe damage upon the Titanic, leading to the subsequent unfolding of the tragic events. Within seconds of the collision, Captain Smith and architect Thomas Andrews rushed to the scene to assess the extent of the damage inflicted upon the ship. As they witnessed the severity of the situation, they were overcome with shock and disbelief. The realization struck them that the supposedly unsinkable ship was in fact destined to sink. This revelation stood in stark contrast to their initial conviction that the Titanic was impervious to such a fate, owing to its impressive safety features.
But this ship can't sink.
She's made of iron, sir. I assure you, she can. And she will. It is a mathematical certainty.
2 primary safety measures contributed to the belief in the ship's unsinkability. Firstly, the Titanic possessed a double-bottomed hull, which consisted of 2 layers. Even if the lower layers sustained damage, the second layer was expected to ensure the ship's survival. Secondly, the hull was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments. Even if 4 of these compartments were flooded, the ship would remain afloat unaffected. However, the impact of the iceberg was concentrated on the ship's side, rendering the double-bottomed hull useless, as the sides only had a single layer of protection. Furthermore, the magnitude of the collision breached 6 out of the 16 watertight compartments, causing water to inundate all 6. This exceeded the limit of 4 compartments, leaving the ship vulnerable to sinking. The unsinkable vessel was now destined to succumb to the ocean depths. Approximately 20 minutes after the collision, at 12 a.m., Captain Smith issued an order for his crew to send a distress signal via radio in the hopes that nearby ships would receive it and come to their rescue. Senior radio operator Jack Phillips emerged as a hero in this part of the story. He diligently transmitted distress signals one after another, desperately seeking a response from any vessel that could come to their aid. Unfortunately, there was no immediate reply to their distress calls. However, after another 20 minutes, at 12:20 a.m., a ship named RMS Carpathia, located in the vicinity of the Titanic, detected the distress signal. The operator of the Carpathia communicated with the Titanic's operator over the radio, providing instructions for the stricken ship to stay put while they maneuvered toward them for a rescue operation. The challenge lay in the fact that, despite their proximity, the Carpathia was still 107 kilometers away from the Titanic. Even at its maximum speed, it would take approximately 3.5 hours for the Carpathia to reach the Titanic. The question remained, would the Titanic be able to remain afloat for the next 3.5 hours? The remaining crew members took action by igniting flares and firing rockets into the sky, desperately hoping to catch the attention of any nearby ships. Unfortunately, apart from the Carpathia, no other vessel responded to their distress signals. Meanwhile, Captain Smith made the decision to initiate the evacuation of passengers using the lifeboats available on the ship. In accordance with the protocol, priority was given to women and children to board the lifeboats. Surprisingly, many passengers on the ship did not exhibit much fear, believing in the Titanic's proclaimed unsinkable nature, reassured by the advertisements and claims made by the company. Despite the collision with the iceberg, they held the conviction that the ship would remain afloat. Therefore, when the first lifeboat was lowered, only 28 individuals boarded it, although it had the capacity to accommodate 65 people. However, as time passed, the flooding of compartments became more apparent, causing the ship to gradually tilt. The realization that the Titanic could indeed sink began to dawn upon the passengers. As this understanding spread, chaos ensued, and panic took hold among the people. By 1 a.m., a significant amount of water had flooded the front compartments, causing the bow of the ship to submerge beneath the surface. Consequently, the rear portion of the Titanic rose above the waterline, revealing the propellers. With the increasing tilt of the ship, chaos escalated. People began fighting amongst themselves, vying for a place in the lifeboats. One critical issue exacerbated the situation: the scarcity of lifeboats. With only 20 lifeboats available, accommodating approximately 1,200 people, there were significantly more passengers on board, totaling around 2,200 individuals. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat was lowered from the Titanic, leaving approximately 1,500 people still aboard the sinking vessel. In the midst of the chaos, some resorted to desperate measures, attempting to snatch a place in the lifeboats, while others resigned themselves to their fate and remained on the ship. Eyewitnesses reported that around 2:20 a.m., the Titanic broke into two halves before gradually sinking. In less than 3 hours, the supposedly unsinkable ship met its tragic fate. Out of the 1,500 individuals on board, many either perished with the ship or succumbed to hypothermia, even if they knew how to swim. The water temperature, reaching -2 degrees Celsius, would cause death within minutes due to extreme cold. According to accounts, Captain Edward Smith remained at the wheel of the Titanic until the end, eventually drowning with the ship. Some speculate that he might have committed suicide. Meanwhile, the RMS Carpathia, the ship that had set out to rescue the Titanic, arrived at the scene between 3:30 to 4 a.m., but it was an hour too late to save the passengers. Following the Titanic disaster, numerous questions arose, giving birth to controversies. Investigations were launched, unearthing shocking revelations. What if I tell you that there was another ship, the SS Californian, located merely 37 kilometers away from the Titanic that night? It could have reached the Titanic in time to save its passengers. In fact, an hour before the Titanic struck the iceberg, the SS Californian had issued the last iceberg warning, cautioning about the presence of numerous icebergs in the area. At 11:15 p.m., the radio operator on the Californian switched off the radio as the ship had halted for the night, mindful of the dangers. Due to this, they did not receive the distress signal sent by the Titanic. The proximity between the two ships was such that passengers on the Titanic's deck could spot the SS Californian on the horizon. Even as officers were assisting passengers onto lifeboats, one officer noticed the distant ship and reassured others that help would arrive soon, urging them not to worry. However, the SS Californian failed to respond, even when rockets and flares were fired into the sky. Reports indicate that after midnight, crew members on the SS Californian did observe the rockets launched from the Titanic. They informed their captain, Stanley Lord, but he dismissed the signals, believing them to be celebratory gestures from wealthy individuals on board the Titanic. Had Captain Lord taken the rockets and flares seriously, numerous lives could have been saved. The next morning, when the radio was switched on, the SS Californian received the distress calls from the Titanic. Despite reaching the site, it was too late. The crew encountered a devastating scene of lifeless bodies floating in the water. Both inquiries conducted on the matter placed the blame on Captain Lord of the SS Californian for his failure to act promptly. However, it is important to note that blaming a single individual for such a colossal disaster would be unfair. There were multiple factors and individuals responsible for the tragic outcome. For instance, the inadequate number of lifeboats can be attributed to the ship's builders, who considered them unnecessary due to the unfounded belief in the Titanic's unsinkable nature. Furthermore, the captain of the Titanic failed to conduct safety drills, which were scheduled for the day of the collision. These drills were canceled under the assumption that they were unnecessary because the ship was deemed unsinkable. Another critical error was made by steersman Robert Hickens, who was at the wheel that night. When the iceberg alarm sounded, the deck officer instructed the ship to turn left. However, in a panic, Hickens misunderstood the message and steered the ship in the opposite direction. By the time he realized his mistake, it was too late to avoid the collision. The British inquiry also revealed that the Titanic had received numerous iceberg warnings, indicating the need for caution. However, despite these warnings, the ship continued to sail at full speed. The reasons behind this decision are subject to various theories. One popular theory suggests that Joseph Bruce, the chairman and managing director of the White Star Line, the company that constructed the Titanic, influenced Captain Smith. It is believed that Bruce exerted pressure on Smith to maintain the ship's speed. The company had tremendous expectations for the Titanic's maiden voyage, aiming to complete it in just 6 days, breaking records and showcasing the ship as not only the largest and most luxurious, but also the fastest. A specific incident on April 14th at 2 p.m. further supports this theory. When Captain Smith showed Joseph Bruce an ice warning, suggesting a reduction in speed, Bruce discreetly pocketed the paper to prevent passengers and crew members from becoming aware of the need to slow down. His priority was to maintain the ship's speed and avoid any delays. This devastating disaster forever changed the maritime industry, prompting the establishment of new regulations and standards to prevent similar tragedies in the future. In 1914, the International Ice Patrol was formed to alert incoming ships about the presence of icebergs along their routes. The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea was also signed, setting comprehensive standards for ships. For instance, regulations were implemented to ensure an adequate number of lifeboats for every passenger on board. The wreckage of the Titanic remained undiscovered at the bottom of the sea for more than 70 years. The long delay in finding the ship can be attributed to the harsh conditions of the Atlantic Ocean, which presented significant challenges to exploration efforts. Even the Titan submersible, which was sent to investigate the Titanic, tragically met its own demise in the vicinity of the ship. To learn more about the Titan submersible and its connection to the Titanic, be sure to check out my video on this subject. It was until September 1985 when American ocean explorer Robert Ballard, along with a French oceanographer, successfully located the sunken ship. The remnants of the Titanic were found approximately 3,800 meters below the surface, with 2 separate pieces of the ship discovered about 600 meters apart. Over time, environmental factors have begun to erode the submerged vessel, and reports indicate that bacteria and other organisms are gradually consuming its metal framework. It is projected that by 2030, the ship will have completely disintegrated underwater. Despite the passage of 110 years, the fascination with the Titanic continues to captivate people's minds. In 2012, Australian billionaire Clive Palmer announced plans to build Titanic 2, an exact replica of the original ship. He even declared that it would follow the same route as its predecessor, meticulously replicating every aspect of the vessel. However, due to delays, the project initially intended for completion in 2016 has not yet been realized as of 2023. Interest in the Titanic 2 project appears to have waned, with some attributing it to the lack of modern amenities such as TV and Wi-Fi. Therefore, it is suggested that the unsinkable Titanic 2 may have already met its demise even before setting sail. I hope you found this episode informative. If you did, I kindly request you to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I would love to hear your suggestions for future video topics in the comments section below. Thank you sincerely for your support. We will meet again very soon, but in the meantime, please feel free to explore my other videos. Goodbye.